it's one that's very real that we've experienced, So almost by definition, as you enter into a new field, you just don't have the depth of knowledge or experience and so forth in order to be automatically viewed as an expert, or perhaps to have a very strong opinion about a particular field. And yeah, I think we found that practically speaking, Lusani, when we started to consider with the Actuarial Society, as we enter the public interest domain, what kind of research do we need, and what are the implications of that research for our participation in public interest? And I think one of the things that we realized is that the skill in the research in that field is not about, the depth and the intricacies of that research. The skill in that research lies a lot more in your ability to distill a sensible contribution from what almost is still shallow research. Because that is almost the nature of the situation, and it's that skill to translate and become relevant, even though you're not a deep expert yet, which is quite difficult. But I think without that, it's quite difficult it's hard to break into a new field, because you have to earn your stripes, and you have to do it on the back of sometimes knowledge which is still flimsy or that hasn't been well developed.
Just to add on that one, Jannie, and we have some examples of people within the profession that have gone out and became trailblazers in different fields. The one that I would talk about is Heather McLeod. I think you would know her. She's done that a few times. She went into health. She had to figure things out there, looking at health economics and so on. And now she's more into, environmental management, climate change, etc. And she did a public interest seminar recently for the Actuarial Society. And I think what amazes me is the humility with which she approaches the topic. I mean, already she knows a lot already. And she's actually gone back to class. I mean, she's doing the course at university. I'm like, I have no energy to do that. But anyway, she's doing that. And she mentioned a statement while she was presenting. She said, the professor, the gentleman who did the slide and so on, is somebody who I'm learning from. She actually used the concept of at whose feet I'm sitting at his feet, basically learning. That whole picture of, if you look into some of the historical books and the disciples, etc., that concept of learning from somebody. And I thought to myself that is actually quite rich. That's profound for somebody like her to say that. And even if you look at just age-wise and so on, you would think, is there still a need to do that? But clearly there is. So the attitude to say, I need to learn, and therefore, I need to shadow people who have been in this for their whole life or significant experience, and learn from them. And also, there's a lot that goes into that, because you can learn by watching YouTube videos, as some of you will be watching YouTube videos. If you're listening to me, you're probably watching a YouTube video. So you can learn by reading books, but there's a difference as to when you're learning from a person, somebody who has embodied that knowledge. There's something valuable there, and it shouldn't be lost, especially in this sort of Zoom generation that we're in. We should not lose sight of just that human touch and that conveying of skills and values to the next person, which is very vital in the kind of with the kind of things that we're talking about here. And the issue of research, I'm in academics now, and I need to figure that out. I need to figure out, how do I do research properly and consistently. And I, in terms of a supervisor, within the university, I picked somebody who is not an actuary, but works in our department, but has loads of experience producing masters and PhD students, etc., and understands certain parts of our subject matter very well. But what I'm looking for from him is that experience of sitting down, doing research, or supervising students to complete the research and graduate with a PhD. Because I don't have that. Yes, I may be the president of the Actuarial Society, but I don't have a master's degree. I don't have that. So I need to learn from somebody who does.
It's a great opportunity to just give a pun for the journey that we're embarking on, as ASA when it comes to research, and I think it's important to talk about this, because I think as a profession, this is the one area I think we can do more, where we can do better, particularly when it comes to non-proprietary research. I think there's a lot of research happening within organizations, and I think fantastic work, but we, when we look at it from a ASA perspective, we need to ask the question, what are we doing on the research side, and is it important to us? And I think as council, we got to that conclusion, and the departure point was almost to say, research is foundational for any profession, ours included. If you don't embark on research, and if you don't encourage and make sure you continue to do research, then I think you're in trouble as a profession. So, and I think councillors have accepted that, and it's about, okay, well, how do we create that environment within our profession to encourage research. I think that there is actually a lot of research happening, but it's unstructured. It is driven from individuals' perspective, and we see it at the conventions and at the sessional meetings, and within the academic institutions, there's a lot of research taking place. So, I think what will help a lot is if one can give direction and leadership in terms of the areas of research that is necessary and that we view as important, and facilitating that to a large extent without becoming a research house. I don't think we can become a research house at ASA. As ASA, the field of research is just too wide for any one research house to be able to cover that. But I really believe there's a lot of latent capacity within the profession to latch onto and to almost mobilize if we do it in a sensible way, and so I think that's the journey that we are on, is to say, well, how do you tap into that? How do you help people to get going with research, give them the tools and the encouragement, sometimes the ideas and direction, to do the research, and in that way make sure that we have this thriving activity taking place as one of the things that we need to do as a profession. This is clearly not the only thing. I mean, there are many other aspects to being a profession, but this is one that I think we need to do more on, and which we're hoping to do so.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that, and I have a question for ASA, which is, to what extent does the research need to be formalized in the way that we would understand it in academia, versus leaning on discoveries that are being made in the entrepreneurial world? So if I just think about the time that I've been in this profession and ask myself, what have been the great breakthroughs? What have been the really standout things that we can say our generation contributed to actuarial study? And there are some. I can certainly think of things like ALM techniques that were emerging 20, 30 years ago, things like telematics and so on. But if you think about it, at its core, we're still using a lot of the tools that were created many decades ago, centuries in some cases, in the sense of life tables. So how do we create a sense of innovation within this research domain that doesn't purely rely on the formality of a strict academic program and borrows from or collaborates with the business world and says, in order to be nimble in the world of insurance or the world of banking, or indeed in the world of social care, this is what we've got to do, and almost reverse engineer from how innovative we need to be, what the solution might look like.
So, the way I look at it, and it's an interesting question, it's like, I think we sort of in the middle, stuck between sort of two places. One is the formal academic research that you referred to. The other is the proprietary research that is done within the companies. And I think you've got actuaries involved in both. You've got not as many in the academic setting, but you do have. And it tends to be quite slower because it's more formalized, etc. And then you do have a lot of actuaries who are involved within their, company, private setting, so on. What is sort of missing is the ability to then innovate beyond those companies, or beyond certain sort of topics that one is covering at an academic level. And I think we can find the middle ground here. And we do have to have aspects of the nimbleness, if that's the right word. And then we also need to have aspects of publication for wider consumption at this level as well. Because what you don't have in the private space is the wider consumption, which limits you to only the sort of internal cross-pollination there. But if you wanted wider cross-pollination, there needs to be an aspect of publishing, which, would somehow be a bit similar to what you see in the academic setting, but, coming into the space. So if for instance, if we consider some of the topics that we are tackling as the Actuarial Society, for instance, I would look at an issue, a new topic. The one that we've started tackling is the medical malpractice or medical negligence in the public sector space, in public health. Now, there have been numerous research papers published on the medical aspect of it and etc. But to have one that actually almost tries to look at the entire sort of value chain and analyze certain things, that was missing. One that sort of gives you a very good, almost like a crash course when you're coming into that. That was missing. So we started with that. So let's just do that. So the effort there is to really just to understand the literature, to understand the case law, understand some of the actuarial aspects, and then put it all in one paper, and publish it, at least in the membership. But it's it's available. It's not something we want to. It's not IP. Well, even if it's IP, it's not IP that I want to hide. It's what we want to distribute it so that it can spark certain things. So a doctor can read it and it can spark something in him. A lawyer can read it and spark something, and then it sparks collaboration. It sparks, policy makers to start thinking about certain things as well. And even then, it provides for the membership for actuaries an opportunity to research some of the topics even deeper. So the one gentleman who put this together, he is thinking of doing a PhD in one particular aspect of what he researched. And then there are other things that we're looking at. Said maybe somebody can look at this, and somebody can look at that. So that is sort of how we approach it. It will be out there, it will be published, and part of the public interest role is to publicize that, to really make sure it's out there. I mean, we're just working on a press release about this, and hopefully it will go wider and wider, and it'll be discussed in media as well. And then we want to also set up discussions with the policymakers and so on. We know that, policymakers, or especially departmental officials, they've got a lot of pressing issues, priorities, etc. That, if your issue is not there's no noise around your issue out there, they might not even want to agree to meet with you. But if it's a pain and there's noise out there, they will meet with you. And so to listen to, what do you actually have? We had you on radio, on SAFM, they were talking about this thing that you did and so on. We're quite keen to actually hear what your views are about this. So we have to actually be very wise around it. But what gives us confidence is the fact that we've done some groundwork. We recognize that there's more to do, but we've done some groundwork. We can point to that, we can point to that, we can point to that. Doesn't make us experts, but it just means that we are prepared to start making the linkages and to make tools available for others to be able to be effective in this debate. But that is sort of how we went to
yeah. I think one's got to think about this, you know, as scientists, you know. So we scientists, as in the broad sense of the word, you know. And how do you build scientific knowledge? You know, it is you take ideas up to a certain point and you put it out there, and somebody else picks up that idea and connects it to another concept, and you know, you build knowledge and understanding like that. You know, I think to do research and hide it is pointless. You know, I think you have to be able to you know, to record what you have researched up to a certain level and make that available. So that for me is a starting point. It doesn't mean every piece of research needs to be taken to the nth degree in terms of publishing it in a journal or, you know, getting a PhD based on that piece of research. No, I think there's space for all kinds of research, you know, but you need to make sure that when you do research, you actually get it up to a certain point, you know, and it could be it's a presentation at a sessional meeting, but at least that is something that you've done to a certain degree of quality. You understand, you know, the limitations of that piece of work, but you know what's been done and who's done it, and you know what is your main conclusion or finding or still remaining problems from that, and that becomes part of your body of knowledge. You know, if you think about something like Bitcoin, Bitcoin leaned initially, I mean, when Nakamoto published his paper in 2008, he leaned on papers that were published, you know, in the 90s on cryptography. You know, it's pieces of research that was done without any idea where this thing is going in, you know, a decade or more before it found a particular application. You know, and that's you know, it's a kind of research that I think we should have tolerance for, is to say sometimes you don't know where this piece of research is leading you. Curious about it, somebody's interested in it, and you do it purely for that fact. You know, I think a lot of our research is goal orientated. You know, this is a problem, let's look for a solution for it. And I mean, it's easy to motivate for, and clearly there will always be that research that takes place because, I mean, there's a natural one for that, you know. And it's a striking, you know, some form of balance between, you know, this different kinds of research and creating an environment where people can do that work and share it within a community that's sometimes a lot bigger than what we think it is, because I think a lot of people are interested in research and they just don't know where to start. And so that's sort of how I'm thinking about this problem, Marjorie, that you're describing in terms of you know, getting the conversations going and encouraging people to do work in an environment that is constructive but not necessarily restrictive, you know, in its application.
Yeah, and I think there's great power in the idea that you were talking about, Lusani, about opening up the research and inviting input from other professionals and indeed members of the public, because then the opportunity for those ideas to grow and to morph into something applicable in different domains, or even to be capable of being applied, relies on different ways of thinking and taking those thoughts forward with the participation of others, I think is a really strong move forward for ASA?